is near.
Oh God, don't sing.
And so I face the final curtain.
Oh, it's a duet now. Okay.
You've already got the coronavirus. That's enough.
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT to the Banter.
You're going to have to hold on a second because my daughter has stolen my cowbell for the 7 o'clock noise-making thing.
Yeah, I've been using mine for that too.
Yeah, I'm going to have to improvise here. Hang on. What are we doing here? Okay. Oh, there you go. Rick's in charge of cowbell. Okay, banter.
Excellent. Hey, my name is Rob Minot. Joining me today, Mr. Steve Barclay.
That would be me.
And Mr. Rick Chant.
That would be me.
Joining you from our respective hovels once again.
Indeed.
Holes in the wall.
North Vancouver, Burnaby, and New Westminster all represented in the house.
That's right. So another 2 weeks into this. How are you guys doing?
A little more stir-crazy this week than last week. But yeah, pretty much at equilibrium.
You know what? I'm glad I don't have children that are home full time.
Right.
Oh my God, I feel so sorry for the parents that have small kids that need to be refereed and entertained and walked and fed, and I mean, oh God.
Yeah.
What we're starting to see in our townhouse complex here is that the parents have pretty much just given up on not having their children interact. Like they're all running around outside, sharing toys and
Yeah.
crisscrossing in the parking lot, and it's like, we've got kids from a year old on up, and at first they were all being indoors, but no, I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, there's a
Well,
real...
it can't be easy. It can't be easy.
No. But I mean, in our complex, we've got first responders, we've got people who work in the grocery stores, and if it gets in here, it'll turn into a petri dish, I'm sure. But so far, so good.
Yeah. See, I'm managing fairly well, actually, I think, to stay out of the mix of people. I did a pickup yesterday at Park Royal, and the woman just hung her stuff on the door of her apartment. So I went in, picked it up, and carried on.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a drop-off over on Victoria and 11th. Was the same thing. I set it down beside the door, rang the doorbell, stepped back. She came and got it, and I picked the other one up. So, and other than regular interaction, the only person I regularly interact with is Nicole. And I mean, she only lives 5 blocks away, but where she works for me, it's kind of like, it's hard to stay at each other's way.
Yeah, you don't hose her down as soon as she shows up at the house.
No. They do that at home though.
Yeah.
And Suze is right on top of it, right? She goes out in the morning. She's got fresh, clean clothes on. She goes to the hospital and changes into scrubs and decontaminates before she does anything at the hospital. And then when she comes home, she decontaminates and puts everything in a plastic bag and takes it home and launders it and lays it out on the bed for tomorrow morning and immediately gets in the shower. So she's being really disciplined about trying to stay at a distance.
Yeah. Are there many cases at Lionsgate now?
I don't know what the number is, to be honest. I know They were expecting a bit of a bump in the numbers because the long Easter weekend was so nice.
Right.
And one of the male nurses there that I know, I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying, "Yeah, it's coming." So at the moment, they're still looking for the big peak, and I don't think it's come yet. But with the weekend being so nice, I suspect it might be sneaking up.
Yeah, I would be surprised if we didn't have a spike after Easter weekend, and I think that'll happen all over North America, certainly.
Yeah.
And certainly in some parts of the States where the churches just flat out refuse to to not hold services, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hopefully going to taper off after that. We don't have. I mean, what's our next holiday officially? Is like
May long weekend.
May long weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Mother's Day.
Yeah, well, that's always the danger. You know, people start to become a little bit too comfortable. They think that, they look at the numbers and they feel like, the numbers are looking pretty good. And so it's just human condition. You know, we watch the news and we hear all these reports, and it's just a natural thing to just kind of like distance yourself from that. It's something that, you know, somebody getting coronavirus is something that is happening to other people right now. And so you think you're a little bit invulnerable. We all have that inner 19-year-old in us where we just think that
not going to happen to me.
Not going to happen. And, you know, that's what you think up until the day that it does happen to you. So I think that's the biggest danger of all this, is just that people stop becoming vigilant and cautious, and apathetic about it. You know, you get used to this, and
I think the other emotion that you have to put in there is two of them actually, is you get tired of being so disciplined, and you let it slip a little bit.
Yes.
Or it's to hell with it. Let's get it and get it over with.
Yeah.
Those are the two options, right? And none of them are nice. But I mean,
Yep.
the U.S. had a bad day yesterday. You know, 2,405 deaths.
Yeah, it's
Crazy.
And there are over 609,000 infections at the moment, and that's stupid.
Yeah, so I'm off social media again, right? I quit Facebook and Twitter last Saturday because I just couldn't take the stupid anymore. Because
Well, there's plenty of stupid out there.
there is just an overwhelming wave of stupid particularly on Twitter, of people sowing misinformation.
Yeah.
And I just can't take it anymore. You know, I thought it would be good for the social distancing time to get back on social media so that I could communicate with people. And I've discovered more and more, I don't like
Not
people.
so much.
Particularly stupid people. I don't
Not
like
so
stupid
much.
people.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
People who are willfully obtuse.
But I did take one of your suggestions the other day, Steve. You were saying that you went out and sat around the parking lot. Well, we went out and sat on the edge of the property here, and the next door neighbors down the street, and the people across the street, and the woman from around the corner. They all came and dragged their lawn chairs. We had a really nice evening. It was really nice. Kids across the way roasted marshmallows in their driveway, and
Nice.
it was really quite pleasant.
Yeah, as long as you can maintain the social distancing, and you might have to yell a little bit, but what the heck?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're on a fairly quiet street, so I mean, we had to raise our voices, but it certainly wasn't yelling.
Yeah.
So it was good. It was nice.
Yeah, I was out for a walk the other night, and walking by a couple of houses, and you see like neighbors like standing 10, 12 feet apart, just talking. And it's just
talking.
It's just the new kind of norm where you just you keep that distance, but you're still able to sort of be social as much as you can be, and so people are adapting. That's the kind of heartening thing about all this.
And reaching out to people that they might not know to approach, but they know to say hi to.
Right.
Now, the other thing that we did the other night, which was really eerie in this new situation that we're in is Sue's had to go down to Discovery to pick up some training materials from the unit. And we got to Stanley Park, which is closed, and we approached the parks ranger and got permission to come into the park, but there was nobody in Stanley Park. No cars, no people, and I mean, it was after dark, so granted. No bikes. We did see 2 bicycles over by the Skin Diver, sitting on the rock, but that was it, and it was eerie.
Yeah.
Well, you know who I feel really sorry for? It's the squirrels, raccoons, and other assorted wildlife in Stanley Park.
Yeah, who are going to be hungry. Who are going to be good and hungry.
Starving because they're so used to getting fed by the tourists. Probably wandering around going, oh, they're all dead. They're all dead.
Yeah.
it finally happened.
We're going to have to start farming.
And right there outside of Prospect Point Cafe, they've got a great big raccoon house built in the tree, and it's called the Condominium.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if there's 1 in there or 50 in there, but I'm sure they're looking at each other going, the social distancing thing is not working for me.
Yeah, I feel like the last couple of weeks in the public consciousness is a little bit of a grieving process. I think everybody's starting, well, most people are starting to realize that we're sort of in a new reality for the foreseeable future, and that it's going to mean losing some things in our society that we've had for a long time. Even if it's temporary, from pubs to restaurants to bars to big social gatherings, sporting events, all these things. We are not going to be back into those things until who knows when. I mean, I don't think anybody knows at the moment. So
yeah, and I think people have resigned themselves to that.
Yes,
for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like that's people are sort of starting to realize that this isn't going to be a 2-week thing. It's not going to be a 4-week thing. This is, until there's a vaccine.
Months. Yeah.
So and I think that a lot of the anxiety that people are feeling is this unknown. Like what are we going to be able to do? How long and how stringent are these restrictions going to be?
Well, yeah, but people are always afraid of the unknown, right?
Sure. Yeah, exactly. And we're not used to it. We're definitely not used to it in the past few generations. Arguably since any of the big wars, we've been used to the status quo and
pretty liberal freedoms.
Yep.
by the far stretch.
So it's so I feel like people are really starting to work through that, and we're starting to see adaptation. We're starting to see people working with what we've got, and that is heartening to see.
It's not easy.
No.
But you know what? People are indeed stepping up.
And here's my hope. Being the optimist of the podcast, I think that the goal here isn't to go back to normal. I think the goal here is coming through this and actually improving on what the normal is.
I agree.
Why go back to the way it was when the way it was flawed anyways? I mean, there's a lot of things with the way things worked that we could improve on and that we could make better. And that's...
I think part of that is the normal that we knew was a normal that we evolved to.
Right.
And the little tiny changes, you don't see them in the big picture until you get to that destination, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh, well, let's rip this Band-Aid off and see what it looks like. And it's a stark reality where we are, what the normal was, and what it can be.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm starting to see more and more discussion of things like universal basic income.
Yes.
To make sure that people have a consistent source of income, no matter what. And I think that'll be a big discussion coming in the future. I think we'll see that in our next election cycle. We'll be talking about things like that. We'll be talking about transforming our society. We'll be talking about things like self-sufficiency, not having to rely on China for key medical equipment and supplies.
I agree. I think that's really gonna play a big part of whoever's campaign is, trying to win the country.
Yeah. And for certain industries, this is going to be a really great thing. You look at the pulp and paper industry here in BC, all of a sudden the pulp mills are producing at maximum capacity because people need face masks.
Yeah,
Right.
That's right.
And even after this is over, there's going to be demand for in Canada made medical supplies like that.
Yep.
That we'll rely on, might invigorate some of our natural resources sectors and manufacturing sectors in a way that we haven't seen in years. Same's true of food security. We're looking down south at the mayhem happening down there and wondering, okay, if this had been worse and trucking had stopped north south, we'd be boned.
Yeah.
In terms of food security, we'd be boned.
Yeah,
even within Canada, I was reading an article the other day about Newfoundland and the shipping company that takes stuff from Montreal to Newfoundland. They're losing, I think they were saying, like $2 million a day.
Yeah.
Because there were less goods to ship, and they're asking for federal help to be able to continue to supply Newfoundland. These logistical concerns like this, we haven't had to review them probably since World War II.
Well, again, it's they've evolved to that.
Yeah.
We don't have to worry about our food security because it's going to come from the mainland for Newfoundland. It's always going to be there.
Yeah.
So I think this is going to be a big wake-up call for a lot of people in a lot of different facets of life.
Well, we do have a society that's built on a lot of assumptions right now, and
That's
amongst
correct.
those assumptions are we're going to be able to get stuff from China and stuff from the United States,
And not be self-sufficient.
yeah. So, if our government isn't talking about pandemic response plans in the next coming election, well,
There's something radically wrong.
There's something very, very wrong. Yeah.
Now, some of the fringe benefits of this is I went to pick Suze up yesterday at the hospital. Beautiful, clear day here in Vancouver. Sun was shining. It was warm. And I looked across the city, and way the hell out there on the horizon were the coastal mountain range.
Yeah, you can see Vancouver Island.
It was beautiful. No,
Yeah.
In Washington State.
Oh, Washington State Range.
Washington State. Sorry, not the coastal mountain range, the Cascades.
Cascades.
You could see the Cascades. It was beautiful. You couldn't see them clear, but they were there, and I've not seen it from that perspective before.
Yeah, you can generally see Baker because it's huge, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and
past
it's not
there,
that far.
Yeah, past there it's hard to see.
We were over in Ambleside the other night, and Baker was underneath the Lionsgate Bridge. We were just at from that perspective.
Mhm.
It's like, Lionsgate Bridge is bigger than Baker. Oh. Not the case.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a great video on Facebook that was made by, I think some people in, I want to say Manitoba or Saskatchewan, the cerebral palsy community there, and it was just some folks in the community talking about the idea of self-isolating, and they kind of made this video to sort of encourage people out there who are going through this for the first time, because for them self-isolating is nothing new. And it was a really sweet video, and it was a really sweet gesture. But one of the interesting things that one of them had to say about what to do while we're here self-isolating is the idea of reflection, of really just looking at your life, looking at things, and reflecting on it, and deciding on how you can make things better. And I think that on a macro level, that's actually what we need to do as a society right now, is that while we have everything stopped, now's the time to reflect on things and figure out.
To take an account and figure out what we can change for the better.
That's right.
Sorry, Rob, did you say on a mackerel level? Are you considering eating fish now or something?
No, macro.
Oh, macro. Oh, okay. Right.
Not mackerel.
Oh, Shan's going to jump all over that. Yeah, no, it's and there's and part of the if there is a theme to this particular episode of the podcast, I think that this is what I would kind of like it to be, is that how can we move the ball forward accessibility wise and within the disability community with some of these new ways of life that we're dealing with right now, because there are some crossover, and certainly, I mean, there are some real. It's really shining a light on some of the difficulties that the disability community is having to face because of these restrictions, and by shining a light on that, these are problems that we can actually kind of fix going forward, potentially.
Yeah, you would hope. I think one area, and we've talked about this before, is things like grocery delivery. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a service which should be reserved for people who can't get to the grocery store as a priority. If there's additional capacity, then sure, maybe the mainstream audience can get delivery, but to be shut in and to not be able to shop independently, and then also to not be able to get groceries delivered because the system is swamped by people who are capable of going out and getting their own groceries.
Yeah,
kind of sucks. And if you don't have friends who can help you out, man, that could be devastating. But my son's girlfriend's family, they placed an order at a local grocery store for pickup. They waited 4 days for the
Oof.
And on the fourth day, the grocery store spontaneously canceled the order without explanation.
Wow. Yeah. And this, and it's funny to think that, I don't know, whatever it was, 4 months ago, we were talking about this Domino's pizza case in the States, and we were sort of, and honestly, it was a little bit tongue in cheek, and we didn't really think much of it. But really, this shines such a huge spotlight on how important accessibility is, online especially, when you consider now online food delivery is like a lifeline to some people right now. Web accessibility for government forms for relief is another great example. Like, if a screen reader can't navigate the government form for relief, and there's nobody there to help somebody who's, say, visually impaired using JAWS, they're just boned. So that's, again, it's so important that accessibility is rock solid right across the board, because these people, it's a lifeline for a lot of people.
Okay, so do you think accessibility and the various and sundry facets that go along with that need to be done on a federal level as opposed to provincial level?
I think it should be mandated in the federal level for sure.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Because right now I think every province has its own Band-Aid solution, and they think they're doing pretty good, and some of them are, and some of them not so much. So, is it time to look at that?
Yeah. Well, Rob, you sent out that article the other day about ADP
Yes. Yeah, we should talk about that.
suddenly being declared that it's not an essential service. So this is the Ontario Assistive Devices Program. They're responsible for providing, in addition to accessibility technology, things like respirators and oxygen,
Mobility stuff.
mobility stuff. And the government has basically said, oh no, we're sending our staff home, and we're not going to be doing any ADP evaluations for the foreseeable future. Yeah, that
Talk about being cut off at the knees.
yeah, exactly. That's to my mind the wrong decision. They need to figure out ways of continuing from home, sure. Whether it be by video conferencing, setting up little pods that people can go to video conference if they don't have the technology at home, something. They
Yeah.
can't just withdraw it and say, you don't need oxygen, do you?
Well, and not only
Saving money, I guess.
that, I mean, it's going to create quite the backlog when things do spin up again, and it's going to affect people for years, depending on how long they've deemed it non-essential and how long it'll actually be shut down for.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's a fairly lengthy waiting list anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just going to push everything back.
And I feel like, again, this is really pointed out the flaws in the system. That, again, if we reflect on these things and fix them going forward, we're going to be that much better off for it. And hopefully, as a society, I guess, I shouldn't say a society, but more like as a government, we're smart enough to actually do that. I have my doubts, but I mean, even you look at the response that the governments have had in terms of realizing some of the holes in the system in relation to people with disabilities. We have, for weeks, we haven't really heard any sort of accommodations for people with disabilities out there because they haven't had time. We're just sort of reacting in real time in general to a pandemic. Nobody's had the time to actually look at, okay, well, how is this affecting the disability community and what can we do to help mitigate that? We're starting to slowly see this happen, but not nearly fast enough for a lot of people in the community that are really struggling right now. I feel for people who, respite workers or like parents who rely on that or rely on care workers, parents who are now faced with having to care solely for, a child with disabilities. I mean, it must be a really, really tough time out there right now, and there's just no support out there for them.
Yeah. I was down at SET BC dropping some stuff off down there yesterday and talking to one of their staff, and he was saying that they're just starting now to get parents calling and saying, what the hell? What are you doing? What are you going to do about this? Because, their kids might have had technology at school for accessing their curriculum, but in a lot of cases, it's still sitting at school. They weren't allowed to take the technology home.
Right.
And, that's where they need it now, right? So.
Again, this is something that we've never had to deal with before. Certainly in the last few generations. So, I guess you have to cut us some slack, but I think only if we actually learn from some of these mistakes that we've made. And again, let's make them better going forward. And so that when we come out the other side of this, universal design, accessibility, these are all things that need to happen. And, my hope is that, we learn from some of this stuff. To sort of shift topics a little bit, because I've seen a lot of articles in the past few weeks about one of the things that we talked about last podcast, which was this idea of working from home, and the big boom of the technology that allows people to work from home, and how that might benefit people with disabilities going forward, because a lot of these businesses have realized that, hey, this is actually doable. Like, if we have to do it, we can actually put the infrastructure in place that allows people to work from home, because a lot of companies they've had to do it. So, the hope is that once we come out of the other side of this, companies will be a lot more open to the idea of maybe hiring somebody who has some real mobility issues and that would needs to work from home on at least a part-time, if not a full-time basis. Maybe they won't pass them over and look at them, to employ them, if they have this infrastructure in place. So I think that kind of the hope is that it might really see an uptick in employability in the disability community.
Yeah, I think ultimately the whole work from home thing will result in some opportunities for some people. I think I mentioned it in the previous podcast. My friend with CP was a prime example. On any given day, it's difficult for him to get up, get dressed, get out to work. But if he was working from home, he could do all kinds of different work. The problem has been traditionally for him that everybody wants him to go into a physical workspace. So, this reimagining of the workspace is definitely something that's going to have some potential benefits, provided that we make sure that accessibility is at the forefront of that work from home experience.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was reading actually an interesting article. And it had an actual interview with Gary Birch, our buddy from Neil Squire Society here in Vancouver. And he had sort of an interesting counterpoint to that, though, that you have to also be careful, because for somebody with a disability, being isolated from their work environment could actually have some detrimental effects too, and make them feel more isolated. So you kind of have to temper that with this idea of, for certain segment of people with disabilities, working remotely from home would be the preferred choice, but it's not necessarily something that would be necessary for everybody. What's your feel for this? Like, do you think that working from home is going to be a bit of the new norm going forward, even once we do knock this down?
Well, I think it will be a lot more acceptable for sure. Everybody who's doing it now, presumably their employer is realizing that they can do their job from home. If there was a measurable decrease in productivity, they might rethink it, but there's a lot of jobs that can be done from home quite easily.
And you think of the benefits from that, like less people commuting means less people on the road, which means less cars on the road, which, you were just talking about how it's so great, the lack of pollution, and you can clear skies. I mean, just think if we could cut down traffic by half normally, I mean, that would only benefit us. I mean, we're sitting here with these high-speed broadband internet connections. Why not take advantage of them? Why not work from home more often? Hey, did you guys also hear yesterday Carla Quattro announced a group that specifically is mandated to help Canadians with disabilities during this?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, this is something that I really, I think that, again, I'd like to hear more about, because how it's impacted things like care homes and facilities for people with disabilities, it must just be devastating for that right now, because the fear of and just the disruption of the day-to-day life and routine must be just awful.
Well, I've got a mother-in-law and a mother, both in care homes. Both of them are locked down. They're not allowing any outside visitors at all. And so far so good at both of them. But internally the residents are being pretty cautious as well. They're socially distancing internally as well as having these external precautions. And the key thing is just making sure it doesn't get in, because as we've seen time and time again, as soon as it gets in, it has a devastating impact on the elderly.
Right.
We saw that at the Lynn Valley Care Home here locally. That's the place my dad used to be in. Susan's worked with folks in there quite a bit. My mom's care worker worked in there when the outbreak happened, and had to self-isolate as a result. But fortunately, there was no infection. And I mean, all you can do is everything that you can do to keep it from getting in the first place, right?
Right.
And again, it comes back in a lot of cases to people being stupid. There's that place down in the West End. I've forgotten the name of it now, that I did a delivery to the day that they
Harrow Park.
Yeah, the day that they basically shut down their doors to outsiders. But when I went to do the delivery, there were their residents in their wheelchairs sitting outside smoking in a group close to one another on the sidewalk with people walking past. How could that place have gotten infected? Is that a possible vector? Sure. It may not have come in that way, but even with an infection breaking out in the place,
Yeah, can't imagine.
They weren't making sure that their residents stayed inside,
Right.
and they weren't giving them an option to smoke someplace other than in the general public on the sidewalk.
But I mean, again, I think that this just points out, I think, the importance of our time right now, and that with all these spotlights being shown on the cracks in the system, I think that we need to be very vocal about fixing them. And putting this episode together, I know last time we talked a little bit about doing something that wasn't virus related, but the more that I sort of dug into news stories and tried to look for news stories, of course this is all anybody's talking about right now, and rightfully so. I mean, we're living in a different society right now than we were a month ago, 2 months ago, and 3 months ago for some people in the world. And so the time for change is now. Like, we need to now it's more important than ever to be very, very vocal, because we have the attention of the government. We have the attention of corporations to say that, look, this needs to change. And everything from, like you said, Steve, a universal wage, a living wage for people out there who, just getting a job and going to work is not something that's as easy as somebody who's able-bodied. And now able-bodied people are actually, the shoe's on the other foot now. Like, they're actually seeing how difficult that can be to live. So we need to point these things out right now. And so, I thought it was important to do a show that sort of talked a little bit about that, because I think that especially people in the disability community, now's the time to make noise. Now's the time to bang those pots and get on corporations that, going forward, once we get through this, now's the time to actually make some changes, and let's improve things instead of just going back to the old normal.
Yeah. Well, at the same point, I think everybody at this point is painfully aware of what's going on and what the repercussions of it are, which is why I wasn't too keen on doing another episode on this virus. So I think what we really need to break things up is, I think we need a jokes episode. I think we just need to. I think we just need to tell jokes. Just do an episode entirely about jokes.
Interesting. I like that.
And just tell a whole bunch of jokes. Like, I heard a great one. The other day, and I'm going to adapt it for Canada here if I can manage it.
Okay, do it.
All right. So these two newfies, they go to the unemployment website. Or sorry,
it's already funny.
can't work with the unemployment website. No, it's got to be an in-person thing. Okay, if they go to the unemployment office, and the worker there says, "Okay, what's your profession?" And Johnny, he says, "Oh, I work at the underwear factory. I'm a panty stitcher." And he says, "Right, panty stitcher." Flips through a couple of books and goes, "Okay, that's unskilled labor. That's $1,500 a month." And then his buddy Patrick goes in. He says, "All right, Patrick, what do you do?" He says, "Oh, I'm a diesel fitter." And guy goes, "Oh, diesel fitter. Okay, that's skilled labor. That's $2,500 a month." So he goes out and he talks to John. John tells him he got $1,500. Patrick says he got $2,500. John is incensed. He goes back in and he says, "What the hell are you talking about? How come you gave Patrick $2,500 when you only gave me $15?" The guy says, "Well, he's a diesel fitter, $2,500. It's skilled labor. Panty stitcher, it's unskilled labor." He says, "What are you talking about? I go and I sew the elastics into the panties, and then he takes and puts them on his head and goes, 'Yeah, diesel fitter.'"
Jesus. Oh my! You are terrible people, all of you.
Hey, okay. On that moment of levity, we have a draw to do.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, let's draw for that jersey.
Okay. Have you actually got names in a pot that you can do a draw from?
I do. I figured out a way that we can do this. So, okay. So tell people what we're drawing for, Steve.
Okay. So we are drawing for the number 3 jersey. Mm-hmm. This is the coveted Barclay jersey.
Lovely hockey jersey.
That's right. It's a lovely AT Banter hockey jersey in extra large. So if you're a small person, it's going to be like a house coat, but okay. So, do her.
All right. Okay. So somebody give me a number between 1. Wait, 1, 2. Okay. Give me a number between 1 and 4.
Rick. Do her.
3.
3. That is Scott. I don't have a last name, but Scott has won the Barclay jersey. Scott Barclay. That's his new name.
The coveted Barclay jersey.
Way to go, Scott. So now we just got to figure out a way to get it to you, and we'll be in touch. So are we going to do another? What's left?
Or who you are, even.
Absolutely. Next week, we will do the draw for the number 2 jersey. Now, is number 2, is that Ryan or is
that's
that
Rob?
That's got to be Ryan. I think that's Ryan because you were number 1, right?
That's right.
That's right.
Oh, the Fleury jersey. That's going to be a popular one. We're going to get a lot of people. So anybody who wants the Fleury jersey, email cowbell@atbanter.com. Tell us you want it. We'll enter you in for the draw, and next week we'll draw it out. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Rob.
Where can people find us?
Well, they can find us at www.atbanter.com.
They can also drop us an email if they so desire at cowbell@atbanter.com.
his image is frozen on screen.
Just use your imagination, folks.
Ding-a-ling.
They can also find us on the old social media. Well, most of us, not Steve anymore, because, well, he's gone back into hiding.
I'm still on Instagram.
People
can send me pretty pictures.
That's right. Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You can find us at. That is going to about do us for yet another home edition. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see everybody in a couple weeks.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com, or call us toll free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840, or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com.
Whoa, look at that. Master of the one take.